For the 5th year in a row, they forgot to invite me to Christmas dinner. So, I packed my bag and went to my cabin in the mountains, seeking peace, entirely alone. A week later, they showed up at my door with suitcases and everything, thinking they could just waltz in whenever they pleased, just like they always had. But when the door opened, they were met with a police officer, rolling cameras, and my attorney waiting for them, and in that instant, they went pale. I know what you're thinking. How did I get here? How did a 67-year-old woman, a grandmother, a widow, end up facing down her own children with the law on her side? Let me tell you from the beginning. It was Christmas Eve, December 24th, 6 in the evening. I was in my kitchen, apron on, preparing hot apple cider. The scent of cinnamon filled the entire house. I had picked up 24 gourmet pastries from Mrs. Higgins' bakery, and I even had a turkey with stuffing in the oven because Richard, my eldest son, always said it reminded him of his dad. The table was set white plates with gold rims, the linen napkins I inherited from my mother, and I even laid out the hand-embroidered tablecloth I only use for special occasions. I waited. 7 o'clock passed, then 8. My phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor, Stella. Margaret. I saw they posted photos on Facebook. They're all having dinner at Richard's place. My heart shrank. I opened the app with trembling hands, and there they were. Richard, his wife Vanessa, my 2 grandkids, my youngest son Ethan, and his partner, all smiling in front of a table loaded with food. Wine glasses raised, laughter, hugs. Without me. Again. It wasn't the first time. It was the 5th. 5 Christmases in a row where they forgot to tell me. 5 times I ended up alone, surrounded by food that no one would come to eat. I sat at the empty table. I turned off the lights on the tree. And I cried in silence, the way I had learned to cry in the 8 years since I became a widow. But in the middle of those tears, something shifted. I wiped my face. I stood up, and I walked toward my bedroom with steady steps. I pulled a suitcase out of the closet. An old brown leather weekender bag my husband used for business trips. It still smelled like his cologne. I started packing. Clothes, medication, documents, and a green velvet box I kept in the back of the wardrobe. A box no one knew existed. A box full of papers that told the truth about everything. At 11 o'clock that night, I locked the front door of my suburban Chicago home. I got into my car, and I drove 3 hours north to the cabin near Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. That cabin I inherited from my husband. That cabin my children always looked down on because it was too far and didn't have high-speed Wi-Fi. That cabin that was worthless to them, but was my sanctuary. I arrived in the early hours of the morning. The cold mountain air hit my face. The stars shone in a way they never do in the city. Everything was silent. For the first time in years, I breathed easy. I went inside. I lit the fireplace. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, and I sat in front of the fire with the green box on my lap. I opened the lid slowly. Inside were the loans Richard never paid back. $40,000 for a business startup that never launched. $25,000 Vanessa begged for to cover urgent debts that I later found out were online gambling losses. $60,000 Ethan needed for a down payment on a condo, but used to backpack through Europe with his partner. There were also the deeds to my properties, the original will, and something else, copies of text messages and emails where they plotted to have me declared incompetent so they could take everything. Because I wasn't stupid. I never was. I had just been too much of a mother. But that night, staring into the fire, I made a decision. No more. I took out my phone. I dialed a number I had saved months ago. "Attorney Patterson," I said when he answered. "This is Margaret Sullivan. I need you to come see me tomorrow morning. I'm going to press charges against my children." There was silence on the other end. "Are you sure, ma'am?" "More sure than I've ever been in my life." I hung up. I closed the box. And for the first time in a long time, I slept soundly, because I knew that when my children finally noticed my absence, when they came looking for me with their excuses and manipulations, I would be waiting, but not alone. And what happened a week later changed everything forever. If you want to know how this story took a turn nobody expected, subscribe to the channel, because what comes next will leave you speechless. Attorney Patterson arrived at the cabin the next day, bright and early. He was a man in his 50s, serious, with a worn leather briefcase and a look that inspired confidence. We sat by the fireplace. I poured him some coffee I had brewed that morning. The steam rose between us as I opened the green box. "Attorney," I began, my voice steady. "I need you to see this." I pulled the documents out one by one. Promissory notes, transfer receipts, text messages, emails, all organized by date, all marked with notes in the margins I had written myself. He reviewed every paper in silence. Every now and then, he glanced up at me, surprised. "Mrs. Sullivan," he said finally, "you've documented all of this with impressive precision. I've been keeping proof for years, attorney. Years waiting for things to change, but I can't go on like this." I told him everything. How after my husband died 8 years ago, my children started seeing me differently. I wasn't mom anymore. I was a wallet, a family bank that never charged interest. Richard showed up first. "Mom, I have an incredible business opportunity. I just need $40,000. I'll pay you back in 6 months. 6 months turned into 8 years. I never saw a dime back. Then it was Vanessa, his wife. She would arrive with red eyes, dramatizing crises that I later found out were lies. "Margaret, we have terrible debt. If we don't pay, they'll foreclose on the house." I gave her $25,000. Their house was never at risk, but her addiction to online casinos sure was real. Ethan, my youngest, the one I thought was different, failed me too. "Mom, I found the perfect condo. I just need the down payment." I wired him $60,000. 1 week later, I saw photos on his social media from Paris, London, Rome. He didn't even bother inventing an excuse. "But that's not all, attorney," I continued, pulling out another folder. 3 months ago, they tried to forge my signature. I showed him copies of notarized documents, papers where I supposedly authorized the sale of a piece of land my husband left me, a prime lot in Lincoln Park valued at $1.5 million. The signature looked like mine, but I never signed those papers. "This is attempted fraud," the attorney said, standing up. "Ma'am, we can proceed legally immediately." "Wait," I stopped him. "There's more." I took out my phone. I opened a voice memo app. I put it on speaker. It was a conversation between Richard and Vanessa. I had recorded them without them knowing, during a family barbecue 2 months ago, when I got up to go to the bathroom and left my phone recording hidden under a cushion. Richard's voice sounded clear. "We need to act fast. Mom is getting old. If we can get a doctor to certify she's not all there in the head, we can take control of everything." Vanessa's voice replied, "Your brother already talked to a lawyer. He says with 2 witnesses and a medical certificate, we can get a conservatorship. Everything would go into a trust, managed by us." Richard laughed. "Poor Mom. Always so trusting, so sentimental. She doesn't know this is about business, not family." The silence in the cabin was heavy when the recording ended. Attorney Patterson looked at me with a mix of indignation and respect. "Mrs. Sullivan," he said slowly, "you don't just have proof. You have a solid case, very solid." I nodded. I felt the tears wanting to come out, but I held them back. I had cried enough. "I want you to prepare everything, attorney. Lawsuits for fraud, for financial abuse, and I want you to install security cameras in this cabin. Good ones. With audio. You expect them to come here? I know them. When they realize I've disappeared, they'll panic. Not for me, but because they need me to sign those land sale papers. And when they find out where I am, they'll come. Unannounced, like they always do." The attorney smiled for the first time. "And you'll be ready." "Exactly." We spent the rest of the day organizing everything. He made calls. He contacted a judge he knew. He spoke with a security technician who arrived that same afternoon to install the cameras. While they worked, I walked through the cabin grounds. The pine forest smelled of damp earth. The birds were singing. The peace I felt was something I hadn't experienced in years. My husband loved this place. He always said, "Margaret, when I can't take the city noise anymore, we're going to retire here. You and me." Peaceful. We never got to retire together. A heart attack took him before his time. But now I was here, fulfilling that dream, even if I was alone. "Ma'am," the attorney called from the door. "Everything is ready. The cameras are running. They record automatically when they detect motion. Perfect. That night, when everyone had left, I sat on the porch of the cabin with a blanket over my shoulders. My phone started ringing. Richard, Ethan, Vanessa, texts, calls. I read them all. I didn't answer a single one. "Mom, where are you? We need to talk as soon as possible. There are papers you need to sign." I smiled in the dark. Let them wait. Let them search. Because when they finally found me, I wasn't going to be the same mom as always. The messages didn't stop all week. Every morning I woke up with my phone vibrating. 20, 30, 40 notifications, all from them. All with the same tone. First fake worry, then thinly veiled demands. "Mom, we're worried. Are you okay? Answer, please. You have us terrified. It's been 3 days. This isn't normal. We're going to your house." I read each one while drinking my coffee on the porch. And I didn't answer. Attorney Patterson had advised me. Leave them in uncertainty. Let them get desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. And he was right. On the 4th day, the messages changed tone. Richard wrote, "Mom, we need you to come back. There are urgent documents for the land. The buyer is only waiting until the end of the month. If we don't sign, we lose the sale and the $1.5 million. There it was. The real reason for their concern. Vanessa was more direct. "Margaret, I don't know what's wrong with you, but this is very selfish on your part. We have serious problems, and you're gone like a rebellious teenager. Get over the Christmas dinner thing. It was a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding? 5 years in a row of misunderstandings. Ethan tried the sensitive son card. "Mom, if you're upset, let's talk. But disappearing like this doesn't solve anything. We're family. Family doesn't abandon family." The irony stung. Family doesn't abandon family. And what had they done to me? But I didn't reply. I kept to my routine at the cabin. In the mornings, I walked through the woods. The cold air cleared my mind. I watched the pines, listened to the creek running nearby, gathered pine cones for the fireplace. In the afternoons, I reviewed my documents, over and over, verifying dates, amounts, details, preparing myself. Attorney Patterson came on the 5th day with news. "Mrs. Sullivan, I hired a private investigator. I asked him to check your daughter-in-law Vanessa's finances." He pulled out a folder. Inside were bank statements, screenshots, transaction logs. "Your daughter-in-law has active debts across 3 online gambling platforms. The total is $100,000. She's been borrowing from loan sharks, dangerous people." I felt a weight in my stomach. Not for her, but for my grandkids. 2 teenagers living in that house, with that pressure, with those problems. "There's more," the attorney continued. "Your son Ethan also has financial trouble. He owes back rent. 3 months unpaid. The landlord has already started the eviction process. And Richard? Richard is the most calculating. He doesn't have serious personal debt, but he desperately needs that money from the land. He invested in an import business that is going under. If he doesn't inject capital soon, he loses everything." So it all made sense. They didn't need me. They needed my money, my properties, my signature. "And the attempted fraud?" I asked. "I've already filed the formal complaint. The notary who authorized those fake documents is under investigation. Your son Richard will be summoned to testify next week." I nodded. The puzzle pieces fit perfectly. That night, while the fire crackled in the fireplace, I took out old photographs from a box. Photos of when my children were small. Richard in his Little League uniform, smiling with missing teeth. Ethan on my lap, hugging me with those chubby little arms. When was it all lost? At what moment did I stop being their mother and turn into their resource? A tear fell on a photograph. I wiped it away carefully. I missed those children, but those children didn't exist anymore. On the 7th day, I received a different message. It was from my oldest grandson, Sam, 16 years old. "Grandma, Dad is furious. He says if you don't show up, they're going to come find you. Please let us know you're okay. I miss you." My heart shrank. He wasn't to blame for any of this. For the first time all week, I replied to a message, but not to Richard, not to Ethan, not to Vanessa, to Sam. "I'm okay, sweetheart. I just needed time for myself. I love you very much." His reply was immediate. When are you coming back? Soon. But when I come back, things are going to be different. He didn't understand what I meant, but he would. Soon everyone would understand. That same night, Richard wrote the message I was waiting for. I know where you are, Mom. We're heading there tomorrow. All of us. We need to talk in person, and you're going to sign those papers. The drama is over. I read the message 3 times. I walked to the window. The security cameras blinked with their little red lights in the darkness. Everything was recording. I called Attorney Patterson. They're coming, I said simply. Are you ready? I looked at my reflection in the window glass. A 67-year-old woman, tired, hurt, but standing tall, more than ready. And tomorrow, everything was going to explode. The morning of the 8th day dawned cold and cloudy. I got up early. I made coffee. I dressed with care. A burgundy wool sweater, dark trousers, my hair pulled back in a simple bun. I wanted to look dignified, strong. Attorney Patterson arrived at 9 with 2 other people. Sheriff Miller, a police officer in his 40s with a serious look, and a young woman with a professional camera. Mrs. Sullivan, the sheriff greeted me. Attorney Patterson filled me in. He will be present as an official witness. Everything that happens will be on record. Thank you, Sheriff. Miss Fernandez, he pointed to the young woman, will document everything on video. It's protocol in these cases. I nodded. My heart was beating fast, but my mind was clear. We went over the plan one more time. The exterior cameras were already recording. The professional camera would capture everything from the inside. The sheriff would remain visible from the start. No surprises. Everything legal. Everything documented. What time did you say they'd arrive? Asked the attorney. Richard wrote that they'd leave early. From the city, it's 3 hours. I estimate between 11 and 12. We waited. I made more coffee. I checked the documents one last time. Sheriff Miller made some calls from the porch. The videographer adjusted her equipment. At 11:30, we heard engines. 2 SUVs were coming up the dirt road, one black, one white. I watched them kick up dust on their way to the cabin. They're here, I announced, feeling the adrenaline rush through my body. Stay calm, ma'am, the attorney told me. Remember, you have control. You have the truth. The SUVs parked in front of the cabin. The doors opened. Richard got out first. Tall, 42 years old, with that bearing he always had, as if the world owed him something. He was wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy. Behind him, Vanessa, perfect makeup, freshly done nails, designer bag hanging from her arm. As always, appearances. From the other SUV, Ethan got out with his partner, David. And to my surprise, my 2 grandkids came along, Sam and Mia, 16 and 14. That wasn't in my plans. I didn't want the children to witness this, but it was too late. Richard walked toward the door with determined steps. He didn't knock. He turned the knob directly, like he had done his whole life, as if this cabin were his. The door didn't open. It was locked. He tried again, harder. Nothing. Mom? He yelled, pounding on the door. Open up. We drove all the way from the city. What kind of games are these? The expression on Richard's face went from annoyance to confusion in a second. Because he didn't find me alone, Sheriff Miller was by my side, in uniform, badge visible. The videographer was pointing her equipment directly at them, and Attorney Patterson stepped out behind me with a folder full of documents. The silence was absolute. What is this? Richard stammered, taking off his sunglasses. Vanessa took a step back. Ethan went pale. The grandkids looked at each other, scared. This, I said with a steady voice, is the end of a lot of things. Come in. We need to talk. Mom, I don't understand anything, Richard said, but his voice didn't sound authoritative anymore. It sounded nervous. You're going to understand. Believe me, you're going to understand. Sheriff Miller introduced himself formally. Sheriff Steve Miller. Your mother requested my presence as a witness to this meeting. Everything will be recorded for the legal protection of both parties. Vanessa whispered something to Richard. He shook his head. Mom, this is ridiculous. We're your family. Why are there police? Why cameras? What did they make you believe? No one made me believe anything, Richard. On the contrary. I finally opened my eyes. Ethan tried to approach. Mom, If you're upset about Christmas, we're sorry. Seriously, it was a mistake. But this is too much. A mistake? I repeated, feeling the old rage rising in my throat. 5 years of mistakes? Or was the mistake trying to forge my signature to sell my land? The silence that followed was like a thunderclap. Richard opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you know. Everyone knows. Attorney Patterson stepped forward. Gentlemen, I have here documentary evidence of attempted fraud, misappropriation of funds, and conspiracy to declare mental incompetence without medical grounds. Do you want to discuss it out here? Or would you prefer to come inside? Vanessa cracked first. Richard, let's go. This is a trap. Nobody is leaving, the sheriff said with quiet authority. Not until the situation is clarified. Sam, my grandson, looked at me with watery eyes. Grandma, what's happening? My heart broke, but I couldn't back down. Something is happening that should have happened a long time ago, sweetheart. The truth. And then began the confrontation that would change everything forever. They entered the cabin in silence, a heavy, uncomfortable silence, full of barely disguised fear. Richard walked in front, trying to maintain his posture of authority, but his hands were trembling. Vanessa was biting her nails, something I had never seen her do. Ethan wouldn't lift his eyes from the floor. The grandkids sat together on the sofa, confused, frightened. Sit down, I ordered, and my voice sounded different, firm, without pleading, without that maternal tone I always used so as not to inconvenience them. Attorney Patterson placed his briefcase on the coffee table. He opened it calmly, taking out color-coded folders. The videographer adjusted her gear. Sheriff Miller stood by the door, arms crossed. Mom, Richard began, I don't know what these people told you, but no one told me anything. I investigated all by myself. I documented it all by myself. I opened my eyes all by myself. I took out the green velvet box. I placed it on the table with a sharp thud that made Vanessa jump. Do you know what this is? I asked, looking at them one by one. No one answered. It's the truth you thought I would never discover. I opened the box. I took out the first document. Richard, October 2017. You asked me for $40,000 for an import business. You told me you'd pay me back in 6 months with interest. You signed this promissory note. I showed him the paper. His signature was there, clear, indisputable. 8 years have passed. I never saw a dime. Mom, the business didn't work out. I already explained that to you. You didn't explain anything. You disappeared for 2 months, and when you reappeared, you acted like it never happened. I pulled out another document. Vanessa, March 2019. You begged me for $25,000. You said you had a debt with the bank, that they were going to foreclose on the house. You cried. You hugged me. You told me, Margaret, you are my salvation. Vanessa went rigid. I hired a private investigator. Do you know what he found? I took out the bank statements the attorney had given me, that there was never a foreclosure risk, that you spent those $25,000 at online casinos, and that today you owe $100,000 to loan sharks? Dangerous people, Vanessa. So dangerous they are threatening your family. She stood up abruptly. That's a lie. You have no right to investigate me. Sit down, Sheriff Miller said with a calm but authoritative voice. Vanessa sat down, trembling. I turned to Ethan, my youngest son, the one who was always more affectionate, the one I thought was different. Ethan, June 2020. You asked me for $60,000 for the down payment on your condo. You said you were finally going to have a home of your own. I felt so proud. Ethan closed his eyes. 1 week later, I saw your photos in Europe, Paris, London, Rome. 3 months of travel. Where did that money come from, Ethan? Mom, where? I had savings. Lie, interrupted Attorney Patterson, pulling out more papers. Your bank account was at zero. The only large deposit was the transfer from your mother. That money funded your trip, and today you owe 3 months of rent. Your landlord started the eviction process 2 weeks ago. David, Ethan's partner, looked at him in disbelief. Is that true? Ethan didn't answer. He just buried his face in his hands. Sam, my grandson, stood up. Grandma, I don't understand. Did Dad steal from you? Sit down, Sam, Richard ordered. No, I want to know what's happening. I knelt in front of my grandson. I took his hands. Sweetheart, your parents didn't rob me at gunpoint, but they lied to me. They used me, and when I didn't have anything left to give, they tried to take the little I had left. How? I looked at Richard. He avoided my gaze. Attorney, I said. Show them the documents. Attorney Patterson placed the copies of the notarized papers on the table. The papers where I supposedly authorized the sale of the land. This arrived at the Recorder of Deeds 3 months ago. A request for the sale of the property located in Lincoln Park, valued at $1.5 million, with Mrs. Margaret Sullivan's signature. He passed the documents to Richard. The problem is that Mrs. Sullivan never signed this. The signature is fake. A pretty good forgery, but fake. Richard looked at the papers. His face went from pale to red. The notary said it was legal. Notary Ramirez is under investigation for fraud. He already testified. He said you paid him $10,000 to process this sale without verifying the signer's identity. Vanessa exploded. This was your idea, Richard. I told you not to do it. Shut up. You're the one who has us buried in debt. It's your fault, because you never earn enough, because your business is a failure. They started screaming at each other, blaming each other, destroying each other in front of everyone. The grandkids were crying. Ethan still had his head in his hands. David watched everything in shock. I remained seated, calm, watching the facade crumble. Sheriff Miller clapped his hands loudly twice. Quiet. Everyone shut up. Mrs. Sullivan, said the sheriff, do you wish to press formal charges? This was the moment, the decision that would change everything. I looked at my children. At Richard, who now looked like a scared boy. At Ethan, crying silently. At Vanessa, shaking with rage and fear. I looked at my grandkids. At Sam, looking at me with pleading eyes. At Mia, who didn't understand anything but felt her world collapsing. I took a deep breath. Before answering that, I said slowly, I want you to hear something. I took out my phone. I opened the recording app. I recorded this 2 months ago, at the Sunday family barbecue, when I went to the bathroom. I hit play. And then Richard's voice filled the cabin. We need to act fast. Mom is getting old. If we can get a doctor to certify she's not all there in the head, we can take control of everything. And in that moment, I saw their souls break. The audio kept playing. Every word was a knife. Vanessa's voice sounded clear. Your brother already talked to a lawyer. He says with 2 witnesses and a medical certificate, we can get a conservatorship. Everything would go into a trust, managed by us. Richard tried to get up. Mom, turn that off. But I didn't turn it off. I let it continue. His own voice continued. Poor Mom. Always so trusting, so sentimental. She doesn't know this is about business, not family. And then the laughter. That laughter that had kept me awake for weeks. Sam stood up abruptly, looking at his father with an expression I had never seen on him. Horror. Absolute disappointment. Dad? You said that? You really wanted to have Grandma declared crazy? Richard reached out his hands. Son, it's more complicated than. Answer him. Yes or no? We were desperate. Your mother has debts. The business is failing. You needed to rob your mom? Sam completed, tears running down his face. Declare her incompetent to keep her money? That's what you needed? Mia, my granddaughter, was crying silently. She got up from the sofa and ran to me. She hugged me tight. Grandma, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You have nothing to apologize for, sweetheart, I told her, stroking her hair. Ethan finally spoke with a broken voice. Mom, I knew. Richard told me his plan. I tried to convince him not to do it, but I needed money too. I thought if you guys handled the legal part, I would just receive my share of the inheritance early. Before I died, I said. He lowered his head. Yes. The brutal honesty hurt more than the lies. David, his partner, backed away from him. I can't believe what I'm hearing. Your own mother, Ethan. You guys don't understand the pressure, Vanessa screamed suddenly. Living with debt, dealing with threats, we needed that money. Then work, I said simply. like the rest of the world does, like I did when your father died and left me with huge responsibilities. I worked, I didn't steal, I didn't lie. You have properties, you have savings, you don't need all that at your age. At my age? I repeated, feeling the indignation rise. At 67, do I not deserve to have anything anymore? Do I not deserve to decide what to do with what I worked for my whole life? Attorney Patterson intervened, placing more documents on the table. Here I have the complete records. Mrs. Sullivan lent you, in total, $125,000 over 8 years. Not a single dollar was repaid. Furthermore, there is evidence of systematic emotional manipulation. He took out printouts of text messages, reading them aloud. Richard, 6 months ago. Mom, if you don't help us, we lose everything. Do you want your grandkids to end up on the street? Ethan, 4 months ago. Ma, I thought I could count on you. I guess I was wrong. I guess money is more important than your son. Vanessa, 3 months ago. Margaret, after everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. With selfishness. Every message was worse than the last. Emotional blackmail, manipulation, manufactured guilt. What did you do for me? I asked Vanessa directly. Tell me, what did you do? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I opened my home to you. I gave you my money. I watched your children when you needed time off. I cooked for your parties. I kept your secrets. I forgave your forgetfulness. And when I had nothing left to give, when you had squeezed me to the last drop, you wanted to take the only thing I had left, my dignity. My voice cracked on the last word, but I didn't cry. I had cried enough in my life. Sheriff Miller checked his watch. Mrs. Sullivan, I need you to decide. Do you press criminal charges, or do we reach a family settlement? Everyone looked at me, waiting, fearing. I looked at Richard. He avoided my eyes. I looked at Ethan. He was begging me silently. I looked at Vanessa. She hated me. I could see it in her glare. And I looked at my grandkids, Sam and Mia, 2 innocent teenagers trapped in their parents' poison. I want to make a proposal, I said finally. Attorney Patterson tensed up. Ma'am, remember that I know, attorney. But I want them to decide. I stood up. I walked to the window. Outside, the pines swayed in the wind. Everything was peace out there. Everything was war in here. I have 2 options for you, I began. Option 1. I press formal charges. Richard faces accusations of attempted fraud. Vanessa too. Ethan, for complicity. All 3 of you could end up with criminal records, possibly jail time. I heard sobs behind me. I didn't turn around. Option 2. We resolve this as a family, but on my terms, and they are non-negotiable. What terms? Richard asked with a weak voice. I turned to face them. First, you pay back every cent I lent you, the full $125,000. You can do it in monthly payments over 5 years, but you pay it all back. Mom, that's impossible. Do not interrupt me. Second condition, temporary restraining order. 3 years without direct contact, except for supervised occasions or real emergencies. I need space. I need to heal. Vanessa scoffed. That's absurd. Third condition, mandatory family therapy. All 3 of you, individual and group, with a psychologist I choose. You will pay for it. And what do we gain? Vanessa asked with sarcasm. I stared right at her. You gain not going to jail. You gain your children not growing up visiting you behind bars. You gain a chance to learn how to be decent human beings. The silence was absolute. Fourth and final condition, I continued, feeling my voice strengthen. You lose any right to my inheritance. Everything I have will go to a foundation I'm creating for elderly women who are victims of family abuse, and a trust for Sam and Mia, which they will receive when they turn 25. You can't do that, Richard yelled. Yes, I can. It's my money, my life, my decision. And then I gave them 60 seconds to choose their fate. 60 seconds, I repeated, looking at the clock on the wall. Decide now. Sheriff Miller took out his notebook, ready to note the decision. The videographer kept recording every gesture, every tear, every moment of desperation. Richard looked at Vanessa. She was shaking her head, furious. Ethan stared at the floor, hands trembling. "This is insanity," Vanessa said. "You are blackmailing us." "No," I corrected calmly. "I am giving you a way out, something you never gave me. But $100,000, where are we going to get that kind of money? From the same place you thought you'd get the $1.5 million from the land. From work, from effort, from living within your means." 30 seconds, announced Attorney Patterson. Sam approached his father. "Dad, accept it, please. I can't watch you go to jail." Mia was still hugging me, crying silently. Richard closed his eyes, his jaw tightened. I could see the internal struggle, pride against survival. 15 seconds. "Okay," Ethan shouted suddenly. I accept everything. I'll pay the money back. I'll go to therapy. Whatever is necessary. Just I don't want charges." David looked at him surprised, but there was some relief on his face. 10 seconds. "Richard," whispered Vanessa. "Say something." 5 seconds. Richard opened his eyes. He looked directly at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something real in his gaze. Not manipulation, not calculation. Genuine fear. "I accept," he said with a broken voice. "I accept your conditions, Mom," Sheriff Miller wrote in his notebook. "And you, Mrs. Vanessa Marquez?" Vanessa clenched her fists. Her face was red with contained rage. "I don't have a choice, do I? Either I accept or I go to prison. That is the reality," I confirmed. "Then I accept. But I want you to know this is cruel. You are cruel." "No, Vanessa. Cruel was what you did to me for 8 years. This is justice." Attorney Patterson took pre-drafted documents out of his briefcase. "You will have to sign a legal agreement. Everything will be in writing. Any breach will automatically reactivate the criminal charges." He placed 3 sets of papers on the table. Richard was the first to approach. He read quickly. His hands shook as he turned the pages. "This says we are forbidden from coming within 100 yards of you. For 3 years. Yes, except for supervised meetings or real medical emergencies. What about holidays? Christmas? Birthdays? You will celebrate without me, just like you were already doing." The blow landed direct. Richard lowered his gaze. Ethan signed without reading everything. His tears stained the paper. Vanessa grabbed the pen with such force I thought she'd break it. She signed every page with rage, violent strokes that almost tore through the paper. "Done," she spat the words out. "Are you happy now? Have you humiliated us enough?" "I didn't humiliate you. You humiliated yourselves with your actions." Attorney Patterson collected the signed documents. "Sheriff, can you certify as a witness?" "Of course." The sheriff signed too, officially sealing the deal. Sam was still looking at his father with a devastated expression. "Dad, did you really do all that? Did you really plan to have her declared incompetent?" Richard tried to approach his son, but Sam stepped back. "Don't touch me. Right now, I don't want you to touch me. Son, please, you lied to me. For years you told me Grandma was complicated, that she was difficult, that she exaggerated, and all this time it was you. You were the problem." Mia pulled away from me and walked toward her mother. "Mom, is the casino thing true? Is it true we have debts?" Vanessa didn't answer. She just looked away. "Mom?" "Yes," she finally admitted, with a hard voice. "I have problems, but that doesn't give your grandmother the right to destroy this family." "I didn't destroy anything," I said firmly. "You guys had already done that job long before today." Attorney Patterson packed all the documents into his briefcase. "The first payment must be made on February 1st. It is roughly $900 a month for you, Richard, and varying amounts for the others, over 60 months. The transfer details are in the agreement." "And therapy?" asked Ethan with a weak voice. "I will send you the psychologist's details. The first session must be within 2 weeks. If you miss 3 consecutive sessions, the deal is void." Richard ran his hands through his hair, desperate. "How are we going to pay all this? The business is broke, Vanessa's debts. That is no longer my problem," I said simply. "You created this mess. You fix it. But we're your family. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't betray. Family doesn't plan to destroy its own members." Sheriff Miller cleared his throat. "Mrs. Sullivan, is there anything else you need?" "Yes, for them to leave. We're done here." Vanessa was already walking toward the door. Let's go. I can't stand another minute in this place. Richard grabbed his jacket. Ethan wiped his tears, but Sam and Mia stood still. Grandma, said Sam with a trembling voice, are we forbidden from coming too? My heart shrank. Those kids weren't to blame for anything. You can visit me whenever you want, my loves. You are innocent in all of this. Really? Asked Mia with hope. Really? In fact, I looked at the attorney. I want it made clear in the agreement that the grandkids can visit me freely, with or without their parents. It will be noted, confirmed Attorney Patterson. Sam ran to me and hugged me tight. I'm sorry, Grandma. Sorry for not realizing sooner what was happening. You don't have to apologize for anything. You're a good boy. Richard watched the scene from the door with an indecipherable expression. Sam. Mia. Let's go, he ordered. In a minute, Dad, Sam replied, not letting go of me. And in that moment, Richard understood he had lost something more than money or property. He had lost the respect of his own children. Vanessa was already in the SUV, honking the horn impatiently. But Richard remained standing in the doorway, motionless, looking at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. Vulnerability. Mom, he said finally with a hoarse voice. I never wanted us to get to this. But we did. Because of your decisions. Because of your lies. He was desperate. The business. I lost so much money. The suppliers scammed me. Imports got delayed. Clients canceled. Everything fell apart in months. And your solution was to rob me? It wasn't going to be robbery. I thought that. I thought with the money from the land I could save everything. Pay you back what I owed. Start over. Lie, interrupted Attorney Patterson. The emails we have show you plan to split the money 3 ways. Nothing was earmarked to pay Mrs. Sullivan back. Richard closed his eyes, trapped in his own lie. Ethan was still sitting on the sofa, head in his hands. David was by the window, arms crossed, processing everything he had heard. Ethan, I said, looking at my youngest son, look at me. He lifted his gaze slowly. His eyes were red, puffy. Why? You were the one who always talked about honesty, values, being different from your brother. Why did you do the same to me? Because I'm weak, he admitted with a broken voice. My whole life I've been the little brother, living in Richard's shadow. When he told me his plan, I saw a chance to finally have something, to not be the one who always needs help, and you felt strong robbing me? I didn't rob you. I just was going to receive my share of the inheritance early. You were going to receive your share when I died, I said. Did you want me to die, Ethan? No, of course not, Mom. Then what did you want? Because you planned to declare me incompetent. That meant locking me up somewhere, taking away my freedom, treating me like I was already dead while I was still alive. The silence was crushing. David spoke for the first time. Mrs. Sullivan. I didn't know anything about this, I swear. If I had known, I would have stopped Ethan. I know, David. It shows you're a good person. I wish my son would learn from you. Ethan sobbed harder. Sam and Mia were still by my side. Mia took my hand. Grandma, can I ask you something? Whatever you want, sweetheart. Why did you never say anything? Why did you put up with it for so long? I took a deep breath. It was a question I had asked myself 1,000 times. Because I was afraid of being left alone, afraid that if I confronted them, I'd lose them forever. I preferred to endure the pain than to live without family. And now I understand that solitude with dignity is better than company with humiliation. Mia hugged me tighter. Sheriff Miller checked his watch. Folks, it's time to leave. The agreement is signed. The conditions are clear. Richard finally moved toward the door, but before leaving, he turned one last time. Mom, I know you think I'm a monster, but I want you to know that I do love you, in my clumsy, wrong way. But I love you. I looked him in the eyes. Love isn't just words, Richard. Love is actions, and your actions showed me the exact opposite. He flinched, as if I had hit him. The 3 years of distance will give you time to think about that, time to understand the difference between wanting and truly loving. Richard nodded slowly and walked out. Ethan got up from the sofa, trembling. Mom, I'm going to comply. I swear. I'm going to pay everything. I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to change. I hope so, for your sake, for the sake of David who loves you despite your mistakes. David came over and gave me a hug. Thank you for not destroying him completely. I'll help him be better. I know you will. Ethan and David left together. Only Vanessa remained in the SUV, furious, honking, non-stop. Sam sighed. We have to go. Mom is losing it. I know. Go. But remember, this door is always open for you. Can we come next weekend? Asked Mia. Of course. I'll make your favorite enchiladas or lasagna, I corrected myself, smiling. The two hugged me one last time and ran toward the SUV. The two vehicles started up. I watched them disappear down the dirt road, kicking up dust in their wake. When the sound of the engines faded completely, I remained standing on the porch, breathing the fresh mountain air. Attorney Patterson came up beside me. Mrs. Sullivan, you were very brave today. I didn't feel brave. I felt destroyed. But you did it, and that's what matters. Sheriff Miller put away his notebook. Ma'am, if at any point they breach the agreement, do not hesitate to call me. Here is my card. Thank you, Sheriff, for everything. Just doing my job, but between us, it makes me happy when an older person reclaims their dignity. It doesn't happen as often as it should. They both said goodbye and left in the patrol car. The videographer packed her gear. Ma'am, do you want me to leave you a copy of the recording? Yes, please, on a USB drive. Sure, I'll send it tomorrow with the attorney. She left too. I was left alone in the cabin. I walked in slowly. I locked the door. I walked to the sofa and let myself fall. My whole body was shaking. The adrenaline of the last few hours finally abandoned me. And then, finally, I cried. I cried for the family I had lost. I cried for the years of abuse I endured in silence. I cried for the woman I was, always giving, always forgiving, always forgetting herself. But I also cried with relief, because for the first time in 8 years, I breathed free. I got up after a while. I washed my face with cold water. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat in front of the fireplace with the green box on my lap. There was one last document I hadn't shown them. I took it out carefully. It was the new will, the one I had signed the previous week with Attorney Patterson. I read it one more time, making sure everything was how I wanted it. The Foundation for Elderly Women Victims of Family Abuse would receive 60% of my assets. The Trust for Sam and Mia would receive 35%, and the remaining 5% would go to David for being the only good person to enter this family in years. Richard, Ethan, and Vanessa. Nothing. Zero. Because love is demonstrated. And they demonstrated that they never really loved me. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of silence, of peace, of waking up without knots in my stomach. I stayed at the cabin, enjoying the sound of the wind in the pines, the crackle of the fire at night, the taste of coffee drunk without haste. Sam and Mia came the first weekend, as promised. They arrived by bus, alone, without their parents. We cooked together. We walked through the woods. We talked about everything and nothing. I told them stories of when their grandfather was alive, of when their dad and uncle were good boys, before money changed their hearts. Grandma, Sam asked me, while we chopped vegetables for dinner, do you think Dad can change? I want to believe it, I answered honestly. But real change only comes when one hits rock bottom. And I'm not sure your dad has hit rock bottom yet. Mom is worse, said Mia quietly. She screams all the time. She blames Dad. Dad blames her. The house is hell. It hurt to hear it, but it wasn't my responsibility to fix it. Heard anything from Uncle Ethan? I asked. I talked to him a few days ago, said Sam. He sounds different, more serious. He said he started looking for a second job to pay faster. I was glad to hear that. The following Monday, I received a call from Attorney Patterson. Mrs. Sullivan, I have news. Ethan made his first payment, roughly $900, in full. 2 weeks before the deadline, I felt something warm in my chest. Surprise, hope. And Richard? There was a pause. Richard hasn't transferred anything, but there are still 2 weeks left. I understand. Also, Richard's wife, Vanessa, tried to contact me. She wants to renegotiate the terms of the agreement. Renegotiate? She says they are too harsh, that they can't comply, that we should consider forgiving 50% of the debt. I laughed. It was a bitter laugh, but a laugh nonetheless. Tell her there is no renegotiation. The agreement is signed. Either they comply or face charges. Simple as that. I will tell her. I hung up and stared out the window. Vanessa hadn't learned a thing. She kept looking for shortcuts, easy exits, ways to avoid consequences. But Ethan paid. That night I lit a candle in the small chapel my husband had built on the cabin grounds. I prayed for my children, for their lost souls, for the possibility of redemption. The next morning, while baking cinnamon rolls, I heard a car approach. My heart raced. The cameras were still working. If it was Richard violating the agreement, it would be recorded. But when I looked out the window, I saw an unfamiliar car, a gray sedan, old but well kept. The door opened, and Ethan got out, alone. He walked to the door and knocked softly. I hesitated a moment. Then I opened. "Mom," he said with a trembling voice. "I know I shouldn't be here. I know the agreement says 3 years without contact, but I need to tell you something. You have 5 minutes." He nodded. He didn't come in. He stayed on the porch, as if he didn't deserve to enter. "I paid my first installment, and I'm going to pay all the rest. I got a night job at a warehouse. By day I'm still at my regular job. I sleep little, but I deserve it. I'm glad to hear it. I also started therapy. The psychologist asked me when I stopped being myself, and I didn't know how to answer, because I don't remember ever being myself." His eyes filled with tears. I was always the little brother, the one living in comparison, the one who was never enough. And when Richard offered me a way to be someone, I took it without thinking. No matter who I hurt. You hurt me, Ethan. I know, and I'm going to carry that the rest of my life. He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. "But I came to tell you something more important, something you need to know." "What is it?" "Vanessa is planning something. I heard a phone conversation 3 days ago. She was talking to someone about contesting the agreement and getting witnesses to testify that you were under duress." I felt a chill. "Witnesses? People she's going to pay to lie?" "She says if she can prove you signed the agreement under coercion, they can annul it. That is illegal." "I know. That's why I came. Because you gave me a chance to redeem myself, and I'm not going to let Vanessa destroy you again." I looked him in the eyes. "My son, my baby, the boy I rocked in my arms 40 years ago. Does Richard know about this?" "I don't know." I stopped talking to him. He is consumed by rage, blames everyone but himself. I sighed deeply. "Thank you for telling me, Ethan. Are you going to do something?" "I'm going to call the attorney. He'll know how to proceed." Ethan nodded. He was about to leave when I stopped him. "Ethan, wait." He turned around. "Is David okay? Is he supporting you?" A small smile appeared on his tired face. "David is the best thing that ever happened to me. He puts up with me. He pushes me to be better. I don't deserve his love, but I'm fighting to deserve it someday." "Then fight. For yourself. For him. For the man you can become." "I will, Mom. I promise." He left. I immediately called Attorney Patterson. I told him everything. "This is serious," he said. "If Vanessa attempts to fabricate false testimony, we could charge her with obstruction of justice. But we need proof." "What kind of proof?" "Recordings, messages, something that demonstrates her plan." I thought quickly. "Attorney, what if we record her confessing?" "How?" "Let me think about it. I'll call you in a few hours." I hung up. I paced the cabin thinking. Vanessa was impulsive, arrogant. If she thought she could manipulate the situation, she would try. I picked up my phone and called Sam. "Grandma, everything okay?" "Yes, sweetheart. I need to ask you a favor. It's important." "Whatever you need." "Does your mom still use her phone for all her important calls?" "Yes, all the time." "Why?" "Because I need you to help me get something, and I know what I'm going to ask is hard. But..." "Grandma," Sam interrupted me with a firm voice, "if it's to protect you from Mom, I'll do it. Mom is out of control. Even Mia is afraid of her. Is it that bad? Worse. Yesterday she smashed plates because Dad wouldn't ask you to cancel the agreement. She screamed that you had poisoned us against her." My heart shrank. "Okay, This is what I need. I explained the plan. It was risky, but necessary, because Vanessa was about to learn that I was no longer the naive mother-in-law she could manipulate. I was a woman who had woken up, and this time, I would get there first. The plan was simple but required perfect timing. Sam would wait for a moment when his mother was distracted. He would take her phone and check recent messages, calls, any evidence of what Vanessa was planning. He would take screenshots and send them to me. It sounded easy, but asking a grandson to spy on his own mother was something that broke my heart. "Grandma," Sam had told me over the phone, "it's not just your fight anymore. Mia and I live in that house. We see how Mom manipulates, lies, destroys. If we can help you stop her, we will." And 3 days later, the screenshots arrived. My phone buzzed at 11 at night. It was Sam. "Grandma, found this. Sorry it took so long, but I needed to be sure." I opened the images one by one and felt my blood run cold. Messages from Vanessa to an unknown number. "How much do you charge to testify that the old lady was confused when she signed?" $2,000. "Half now, half after the trial. Deal. Do you know the family well? You'll say she was always forgetful, acting weird." There was more. Conversations with other people. Vanessa was building a complete web of lies. A message to Richard read, "Your mom humiliated us. It's time to strike back. With 3 witnesses declaring her mental incompetence, we can annul everything." Richard's reply, "I don't know, Vanessa. This could go wrong. Do you prefer losing millions or growing a pair and recovering what is ours?" Richard didn't reply further, but he didn't stop her either. I saved all the screenshots. I forwarded them to Attorney Patterson, along with a message. "The evidence we needed," he replied in 5 minutes. "This is sufficient for criminal charges. Do you want to proceed?" I sat in front of the fireplace with a cup of tea in my hands. The fire danced in front of me, casting shadows on the walls. Did I want to send the mother of my grandkids to jail? I thought of Sam and Mia, of how they would suffer if their mother faced criminal charges. But I also thought of all the people Vanessa had hurt with her manipulation, of how she would keep hurting people if no one stopped her. "Proceed," I finally wrote, "but with one condition." "Which one?" "I want to confront her first, face to face, give her one last chance to confess and recant." "Ma'am, that could be dangerous." "I know. But I need to do it." The attorney accepted reluctantly. We organized everything for the following Friday. That morning, Vanessa received an official summons. She had to present herself at the cabin with her lawyer to discuss irregularities in the fulfillment of the agreement. She arrived at 2 in the afternoon with a young, nervous lawyer who clearly didn't know what he was getting into. Vanessa was wearing high heels, a power suit, hair perfectly coiffed battle armor. "This is ridiculous," she said as soon as she entered, without greeting. "I don't have to be here. The agreement is legal." "Sit down, Mrs. Marquez," Attorney Patterson said with a formal tone. She sat with a defiant attitude. Her lawyer placed his briefcase on the table. Sheriff Miller was also present. "And the same videographer as before. More theater?" Vanessa mocked. "Cameras again? Do you feel powerful, Margaret?" I didn't answer. I just took out my phone. "Before we begin," I said calmly, "I want to show you something." I slid the phone across the table. On the screen were the screenshots of her messages. Vanessa looked at them. Her face went from arrogance to confusion, then to pure panic. "Where did you get that?" "It doesn't matter where. It matters what it says." Her lawyer took the phone and read. His expression changed immediately. "Mrs. Marquez," he said with a tense voice, "did you write these messages?" Vanessa didn't answer. "I am asking you officially, did you attempt to bribe witnesses to commit perjury?" Silence. Attorney Patterson intervened. "Mrs. Vanessa Marquez, these messages constitute evidence of conspiracy to commit procedural fraud, bribery, and attempted obstruction of justice. These are serious felonies that can result in prison time of 5 to 10 years. Vanessa went pale. I just what?" I asked. "Just trying to destroy me again? Just looking for more ways to steal, lie, manipulate? You had no right to humiliate us like that. All this is your fault." "My fault? My fault that you have a gambling addiction? My fault that you buried your family in debt? My fault that you planned to declare me incompetent to steal my property? We had needs. We had rights. You had no right over my life or my money. Her lawyer closed his briefcase. Mrs. Marquez, I cannot represent you in this. I'm sorry. He got up and left without looking back. Vanessa was left alone, trembling. I have two options for you, I said, retrieving my phone. Option 1. I submit these messages formally. The district attorney proceeds with charges. You go to trial and probably to prison. She sobbed. Option 2. You sign a full confession. You admit everything you did. You accept a permanent restraining order, not just 3 years, and you enter a rehab program for gambling addiction, paid for by you. And Richard? She asked with a broken voice. Richard has his own path, but he didn't try to bribe witnesses. You did. What about my children? Sam and Mia can visit me whenever they want, but you will have no contact with me ever again. That is cruel. No, cruel was what you did to me for years. Attorney Patterson placed a document in front of her. You have 5 minutes to decide. Vanessa read the document with tears running down her face. It was a full confession. Every lie, every manipulation, every plan to destroy me. If I sign this, I don't go to jail? If you fulfill everything agreed upon, therapy, distance, payments, no. She took the pen with a shaking hand. She signed, but before leaving, she looked at me with pure hate. Someday you're going to die alone, bitter old woman, and no one will cry for you. I smiled sadly. I prefer to die alone with dignity than live surrounded by vipers. She left, slamming the door. Sheriff Miller filed the signed confession. Mrs. Sullivan, officially this closes the case, unless she breaches. Thank you, Sheriff. When everyone left, I sat in the silence of the cabin. I had won, legally, emotionally, but I didn't feel victory. I felt exhaustion. The exhaustion of years, of battles, of being strong when I just wanted to be a mother. That night I called Sam. Grandma? How did everything go? It went well, sweetheart. Your mom signed a confession. She won't go to prison if she meets the conditions. And Dad? Your dad has until tomorrow to make his first payment. If he doesn't do it, there will be consequences too. There was silence. Grandma, is all this worth it? So much pain? I looked at the flames in the fireplace. Yes, Sam, because for the first time in my life, I am worth more than my money. I am worth more than what I can give. I simply have worth. And that lesson, although painful, was the most important one I could teach him. February 1st arrived. Payment day. I woke up early, with a knot in my stomach. I checked my phone every 5 minutes, waiting for the bank notification. At 8 in the morning, the first transfer came in. $900, Ethan. Punctual again. I felt a flash of pride. My youngest son was complying. At 9, nothing from Richard. At 10, nothing. At noon, I called Attorney Patterson. Richard hasn't paid. I know. I've tried contacting him. He's not answering calls. What do we do? The agreement is clear. If he misses the first payment, criminal charges reactivate automatically. But you have the final word. I hung up and stared out the window. The pines swayed in the cold February wind. Richard, my eldest son, the one born first, the one who made me a mother, was I really going to send him to face charges? My phone rang. It was Sam. Grandma, I need to talk to you. Tell me, sweetheart. It's about Dad. He's bad. Very bad. Bad how? Yesterday his company went bankrupt. The creditors took everything. The office, the vehicles, even the computers. Sheriffs showed up and took everything. I felt a weight on my chest. And that's not the worst. Sam continued with a broken voice. Mom left him. She said she wasn't going to sink with him. And you, Mia? We stayed with Dad. Someone has to be here. But Grandma? I've never seen him like this. He's on the couch, hasn't showered, hasn't eaten, just stares at the ceiling, doesn't speak. I closed my eyes. Pain, rage, sadness, all mixed. Where are you now? At the house. But a notice came from the bank. They're 2 months behind on the mortgage. They're going to lose the house too. Sam, listen to me carefully. You and Mia can come stay with me. Always. This cabin is your refuge. And Dad? That was the question. The question I had been avoiding. Your dad has to hit rock bottom. Completely. It's the only way he'll learn. Grandma, he already hit rock bottom. He lost everything. Not everything. He still has you. Sam sobbed on the other end. I don't know what to do. Come tomorrow. All three of you. Your dad too. Really? Really. But under my conditions. I hung up and called Attorney Patterson. Attorney, do not reactivate the charges. Yet. Ma'am, give me 3 days. Just 3 days. All right. But after that, legally I must proceed. The next day, Richard arrived with his children. He got out of a borrowed car, clothes wrinkled, days of stubble, deep circles under his eyes. He wasn't the arrogant man who had arrived weeks ago. He was a ghost. Sam and Mia entered first. Richard stayed outside, as if he didn't deserve to enter. Come in, I said from the door. He entered slowly, not meeting my eyes. Sit down. He sat on the sofa. The kids went to the kitchen, giving me space. I made coffee. I poured him a cup. He held it with shaking hands, but didn't drink. I lost everything, he said finally with a hollow voice. The company, the savings, the house, my wife, everything. And now what? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Are you going to blame me? He lifted his gaze for the first time. His eyes were red, empty. No, I can't blame anyone else anymore. It was my fault. It was all my fault. It was the first time I heard him admit it without excuses. Do you know what your biggest mistake was, Richard? Trying to rob you? No. Your mistake was believing that money made you someone, that having more gave you value, that owning things was the same as being someone. He lowered his head. Your dad taught you to work hard. I taught you to be honest. But at some point you decided those lessons didn't matter, that there were shortcuts. I'm sorry, Mom. I know it's not enough, but I'm sorry. It's not enough, but it's a start. He took a sip of coffee. He was trembling. I have no way to pay you. I have nothing. I know. So what do I do? Go to jail? I took a deep breath. This was the decision I had been postponing. I have a different proposal. What? I forgive the entire debt, the $40,000. You don't have to pay me back. Richard lifted his head sharply, confused. What? But with conditions. What conditions? First, you come live here, at the cabin. With me, you and the kids. What? Second, you work. There is a lumberyard half an hour from here. The owner is an acquaintance of your dad's. I called him. He'll give you a job, physical work, hard, minimum wage. Richard blinked, processing. Third, you go to therapy. Every week, no exceptions. For how long? 1 year. You live here, you work, you go to therapy, you save every dollar. At the end of the year, if you fulfill everything, I help you start over. A small investment for an honest business. Small, humble. I don't understand. Why would you do this? I got up and walked to the window. Because I'm still your mother, and mothers don't abandon, even if their children abandon them. Richard broke. He cried like he hadn't cried since he was a child. Deep, gut-wrenching sobs of years of arrogance falling away. Sam and Mia came out of the kitchen and hugged him. Dad, Mia said, crying, everything is going to be okay. I don't deserve this, Richard sobbed. I don't deserve your forgiveness. You're right. You don't deserve it. But I give it to you anyway, because that is real love, not by merit, by grace. That night we had dinner together in the cabin. Hot soup, fresh bread, steaming hot chocolate. Richard ate in silence, still processing everything. Sam and Mia helped wash the dishes. When the kids went to sleep in the guest room, Richard and I stayed in front of the fireplace. Mom, he said softly, how can you forgive me after everything I did? I didn't say I forgave you completely. I said, I'm giving you a chance. What's the difference? Forgiveness is earned with time and actions. The chance only requires you to show up, every day, to try. And if I fail, then you fail. But at least you tried. Richard looked at the fire. Does Ethan know about this? I'll call him tomorrow. He is fulfilling his part. You must fulfill yours too. And Vanessa? Vanessa took her path. She signed a permanent restraining order. She is in a rehab center for gambling addiction. If she completes it, maybe she can rebuild something with you guys. But that no longer depends on me. Richard nodded. There is something else you should know, I added. What? The will stays the same. You will not receive an inheritance. Everything goes to the foundation and the kids' trust. I understand. I don't expect anything. Good, because this isn't about money. It's about becoming the people our loved ones deserved us to be. And that night, for the first time in years, I slept knowing that maybe, just maybe, my son could find his way back to himself. 1 year passed, 12 months of transformation, of pain, of growth. Richard met every condition, every single one. He worked at the lumber yard starting at 6 in the morning. He came home with rough hands, an aching back, wounded pride but intact dignity. The first few months were terrible. I heard him crying in his room some nights. A 42-year-old man, used to suits and offices, now hauling logs and operating heavy machinery. But he didn't quit. Every Thursday, he went to therapy with the psychologist in town. He returned quiet, reflective, processing layers of his own darkness. Sam and Mia finished the school year living at the cabin. They adapted well, better than well. They bloomed far from the toxic environment of their previous home. Mia got the best grades of her life. Sam discovered he liked working with wood and started learning carpentry at the lumber yard on weekends. Ethan made every payment, all 60, without missing a single one. In March, he called me crying. Mom, I made the last deposit, the $60,000 complete, with interest. I'm proud of you. I never thought I could do it, but David helped me. He kept me focused. He made me believe I could be better. He is good for you. I know. That's why I proposed. Proposed? Yes, my heart filled with joy. When? In 2 months. And we want you to officiate. Well, maybe give a blessing. Be part of everything. I'll be there. Vanessa completed her rehab program. 6 months inpatient. She came out different, thinner, more serious. Without the manic glint in her eyes, she called me in September. Mrs. Sullivan, I know I signed a permanent restraining order, but I wanted to call to ask for forgiveness. For real, no manipulation, no agenda. What did you learn, Vanessa? There was a long pause. That addiction controlled me for years. That I used everyone around me as resources. That I was destroying my own family for a void I could never fill with money or thrills. And now? Now I'm learning to live with myself. To not need the adrenaline of the game, to face my problems head on. I'm glad to hear it. Will you ever be able to forgive me? Someday. Maybe. But that day isn't today. I understand. Thank you for not sending me to jail, for giving me this chance. She hung up. I didn't know if I would hear from her again, and that was okay. In November, the first Christmas since everything exploded arrived. Sam and Mia decorated the cabin with lights and ornaments. We put a small tree near the fireplace. Ethan and David arrived 2 days before. They brought gifts, food, laughter. Richard prepared dinner. Roast turkey, mashed potatoes, salad, apple cider. He made it all with his own hands. On the night of December 24th, we all sat around the table. Richard, Ethan, David, Sam, Mia, and me. I'd like to say something, Richard began, standing up. Everyone looked at him. A year ago, I was a different person, a horrible, arrogant, manipulative person, willing to destroy my own mother for money. His voice cracked. Ethan put a hand on his shoulder. This year taught me that hitting rock bottom is painful, but necessary. I lost everything material. But I found something I had forgotten, my humanity. He looked at his children. Sam, Mia, sorry for not being the father you deserved, for prioritizing appearances over real love. The two were crying. Ethan, sorry for dragging you into my plans, for contaminating you with my sick ambition. Ethan nodded, wiping his tears. And Mom. Richard looked directly at me. Sorry for forgetting who you were, for seeing you as a resource and not as the extraordinary woman who gave me life, raised me, loved me, even when I didn't deserve it. He knelt in front of me. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but if someday you can give it to me, I will spend the rest of my life trying to honor it. I took his face in my hands. I looked him in the eyes. Richard, I forgive you, he cried like a child in my arms. After dinner, While the others washed dishes and sang carols, I went out to the porch. The sky was clear. The stars shone like diamonds over the snowy pines. Ethan came out behind me with 2 cups of hot chocolate. "Mom, what are you thinking about? About your dad, about how much I still miss him. He would be proud of you, of how you handled all this. You think?" "I know. Dad always said you were the strongest woman he knew. Now I understand why." We drank our chocolate in comfortable silence. "Ethan, are you happy?" "Yes, Mom. For the first time in my life, I am genuinely happy. I have debts. I work 2 jobs. I live in a small apartment, but I have David. I have peace. I have dignity." "Then you are rich," I smiled. "Yes, I guess so." The following days were magical. We walked through the woods, played board games, told stories, laughed. On January 1st, while everyone slept, I opened my journal. I had started writing a year ago, documenting everything. The betrayal, the pain, the struggle, the redemption. I wrote the last entry. "Today I am 68 years old. I am no longer the woman who waited for crumbs of love from her children. I am no longer the mother who let herself be used for fear of loneliness. I lost a family, but I gained something more valuable. I recovered myself. Richard is learning to be a real man. Ethan found his way. Vanessa is healing. Sam and Mia are growing in an environment of genuine love. And me. I finally understood that dignified solitude beats humiliating company. The cabin everyone despised became our refuge, the place where a broken family learned to rebuild itself. Not with money, with truth, with consequences, with tough love, but real love. My foundation for elderly women will open in March. We will help others like me find their voice, their strength, their dignity. Because no one should wait until they are 67 to learn that they are worth who they are, not what they can give. I closed the journal. I looked out the window. The sun was coming out behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and pink. A new year, a new life. Sam came out of his room, sleepy. "Grandma, you up already?" Couldn't sleep. Was thinking. About what? That sometimes losing everything is the only way to gain what really matters. He hugged me tight. "I love you, Grandma. I love you too, sweetheart." Richard made coffee. Ethan made pancakes. David put on music. Mia was dancing in the kitchen. And I, sitting at my table, watched them. My family. Broken. Imperfect. Rebuilding. But real. Finally real. Because true wealth isn't in what you own, but in what you don't allow them to take away. Your dignity, your peace, your self-love. And that no one will ever take from me again. If this story touched your heart, if you ever felt used, forgotten, or undervalued, leave me a comment. Tell me where you are watching from and what lesson you take from Margaret's story. Hit like if you believe it's never too late to reclaim your dignity. And subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories of brave women who learn to put themselves first without guilt. Because we all deserve love. But first, we must learn to love ourselves. Thanks for joining me until the end. Until the next story.